So it's not about what I have to say tonight, it's about what our guests have to say, our special guests that are going to be part of our History Circle. And I'm going to introduce them to you in just a little bit. So thankful that you've all come, and it has been a fun project. So it's great to see you all here to participate in this tonight. Campbell and Burns industry has had a huge impact on this community, more than I realized. And when I started doing interviews concerning the history, that's why this History Circle came to be, because there were way too many stories to keep them hidden away in the archives of the museum. So this is a great way to share the stories of the Campbell and Burns industry. So first we have a brief slideshow. We're going to try and keep it brief because it's really about what these gentlemen have to share. And the idea is a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'm hoping it will help everyone here it'll stir some memories up, and if we have time, we'd like anyone in the room to share a story afterwards. So hopefully this will stir some memories and just kind of feed the conversation to follow. So I'm brand spanking new at this, so let's see how I do. Okay, so the photos come from a combination of the museum's archival material. We were given a nice amount of material by George Wright's, I believe it was his daughter. So wow, he was a record keeper. We love record keepers. Museums love record keepers. So you can see that he moved up through the company and ended up as executive vice president. So a little bit more about him later. Let's see how we go here. Forward. Like I said, I'm new at this. All right, I might have to get Doug here to assist me. Is it frozen there, Doug?
Yeah. Yeah, we need to get rid of that. I'm not sure why.
Just bear with us here for a second, please.
There's something on our screen here which is won't budge. And,
What about the can we might need Hayden, our techie guy here.
okay. There you go.
That's why you have young people here. Okay. So it's
I think it's avoid
all the fine details.
Yeah.
Okay, avoid the cord. All right, so it started with these two gentlemen, and on the left is Harold Campbell, and on the right is Lloyd Burns. And it was like the perfect melding of two business minds and men of agriculture, and they were very innovative, and they brought people on board who were very innovative. We're going to talk to some of them tonight. And they made a successful business of this. And the date's 1954 to 1984. I didn't touch it, Doug.
Yeah.
It's tired from the summer. It's had too many talks.
I think it is a connection. Just stand over it, but you didn't touch it.
I did not.
Yeah.
Is it right in there? I think it's right in there. Okay, let's try going on here. All right. So, one of the materials from the archival box is the information on the shares, the original shares there. Affordable, $100 each. Okay. And I chose this out of the material because it gave us a general overview of their products. So this was a folder that they would have given to prospective buyers. So I had the little red box outlined because it says, we specialize in custom processing to your specifications for spinach, peas, beans, carrots, beets, parsnips, cabbage, parsley, and potatoes. Conventional and pure puff drying facilities are available for custom work. And puff drying sounded like, whoa, I had no idea they were into that. That was kind of cool. Yeah. Next one. And again, this was a welcome, as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, it's pretty fine, to visitors at their plant. And it gives a general overview of their business. I'm just going to read the red box. We are now in the midst of our PPAC, which extends from mid-July to mid-September, and as a result of the peas produced in over 1,600 acres of choice prime Prince Edward Island farmland, carefully selected and carefully tended through the growing season to provide the best possible quality in canned peas at lowest possible cost to the consumer. Our peas fields are all located within, and it goes on to say within so much kilometers of the community. They're local is their emphasis. So that's fairly early on because the acreage is fairly low there, 1,600. Okay. Lots of news clippings regarding the company. This one came from Roy, actually. This was not our archival material. So the boxed area says, Mr. Campbell said that to the best of his knowledge, Campbell and Burns Limited will be the first island processing plant to can the small potatoes and expects that the main market for this new food product will be in England. I don't know how that worked out. It's kind of interesting. And this is part of their innovation. They took a product, the small potatoes, those cold potatoes, and made an industry of it. And it became big potatoes. It was a big industry. So, pretty cool. More of the news articles. Again, I'm going to just read briefly some of the clippings here. First established in 1954, the plant had an initial capacity of producing 48,000 cans of foodstuffs. Yeah, that's a good beginning, isn't it? During 1973, 19 years later, the plant produced 10 million cans of foodstuffs. It was big business. And then the blue box, other crops handled by Campbell and Burns Limited include beets, carrots, mixed vegetables, as well as a wide variety of beans. The first product the plant was engaged in processing was turnip greens for Newfoundland and Toronto markets. And I do want to ask some of the gentlemen in our history circle about that, because it's not something that you hear talked about much, the turnip greens. With the exception of specialized crops, all raw products are purchased from island growers from Tignish to Surrey. So they've gone further afield, because remember in the welcome they said it was within, I think it was within 10 kilometers or something. So now they're going island wide. In the field of specialized crops such as beets, peas, and carrots, Campbell and Burns grow most of their own, usually in the vicinity of 3,000 acres a year. So the acreage has gone up too in 19 years. As Campbell and Burns Limited are basically a canning firm, they require a great number of cans. I love this fun fact. A trip through their storage warehouse gives some indication of the volume of cans required. From floor to ceiling, thousands upon thousands of cans of every size are stored until needed. Finished products and cans are stacked to the ceiling in another section of the plant awaiting shipment to their customers. In January of this year, 125 carloads of empty cans were shipped to the plant, and this amount is expected to last until the end of the month. That's a lot of cans. All right. Here we go. This is a little early advertisement of the flavor pack variety. I would guess this is probably the earliest. The paper when we were handling was very, very delicate. So quite old. And flavor pack, again, their brand. Island products, always your best value. At your grocers now. Go buy them. Yeah. Okay. So this is on the merging. I'm just going through here fairly quickly. This is 69. And we'll just read some of the blue boxes. Being expanded, the facilities of the Flavor Pack division are being substantially expanded, and upon completion will be one of the most modern vegetable canning establishments in Canada, right here in Bedeque. It will be one of the major Canadian producers of canned peas. New warehouse construction has been completed, which now provides over 1/2 acre of modern storage for canned foods. Something is being installed to permit the facility to process 20,000 pounds of shelled peas per hour. So let that sink in. 20,000 pounds of peas per hour, as well as to handle a greatly increased number of different products. And then I thought the red box is kind of interesting because it tells you the staff at that time, and this was July 12th, 1969. It says the new corporate arrangements will mean little change in the day-to-day operation of the PEI division. George Wright will continue as general manager of the PEI division and the Flavor Pack division of Avon Foods Limited. George Campbell remains manager of Campbell and Burns machinery division. The following members of local staff have been promoted to specific functions as follows. General foreman and warehouse manager, Stanley Evans. Office manager, Mrs. Helen Rayner. Field department manager, William E. Nunn. Production supervisor, Ralph McCollum. And quality control supervisor, Albert Creswell. There's a little bit of a photo there. This tells you about the process. That's why I picked this one. During a tour of the plant, Mr. Wright explained the various processes involved. The raw vegetable is brought into the field and dumped into a hopper, which feeds the vegetable, for example, into a washing machine, which washes all the soil off them. From there, it is carried by conveyor belts to a cooker, which cooks the carrots at approximately 180 degrees for 3.5 minutes. From there, the carrots are carried to a skinning machine, which takes the outside skin off the carrot. The carrots are then carried to a slicing machine, depending on the desired method. From there, the carrots proceed to a canning machine, which fills the cans with a regular amount of carrots and water. From the canning machine, the cans are then taken to a retort, which, notice they put report. Oh, that's kind of interesting. To a retort, which is in effect against, there's some errors in their printing here. A giant size pressure cooker. The canned carrots are cooked for a period of 27 minutes at 245 degrees Fahrenheit. The purpose for cooking the vegetables in sealed cans is to keep the full flavor, nourishment, and so on. So from the retort, the cans are cooled in a cold water tank and then taken to the labeling plant where the labels are attached, and in some cases, the cans will not be shipped for some time, so they are stored. So it kind of gives you an overview of the process. Now, some people recognize this lady. And this is Helen Rayner, and she was with Campbell and Burns the whole way through, even before it began. Ron was saying that she worked for them when they had the chicken canning facility going before it officially became Campbell and Burns Industries. So she held them all together and had a huge influence on their day-to-day operations. Helen. And this was some of the staff that was in that box. So this is pictures: George Wright, Don Wood, George Campbell, Ralph McCollum. That's 1974. And this was the last label, I do believe, that was to come out of the plant before they closed. And that's when it went to the Kobe brand. There we have it at the beginning. And it is, of course, the old Dunk River Dairy, which I did not know. So I've learned a lot as we go. People would talk about the Dunk River Dairy, and I knew it was in the general facility, but I did not realize it had been renovated into the Campbell and Burns Cannery. So that was their beginning, pretty humble beginning. And this is kind of in bad shape, but it shows it later in the pollution control ponds have been put in there, so it's in the 70s. We'll talk about that later, but you can see how it's grown. That's the idea here, to a modern facility. There's the can we have in the corner. Flavor Pack peas. And I don't know who this is. Does anyone know who is in this photo? Obviously, they're doing some advertising in the grocery stores. I think on the back it said Kmart. Yeah, on the photo it said Kmart, but it didn't tell us who it was. So nobody knows. I have to think that one through. All right. Oops, I went to the back. That's one of the neatest pictures. Back. Oh, too fast. This one is off a slide, and we had some help getting this into a photo form. That is the greatest photo. This is for the color and the depth and even the intensity on the ladies' faces while they're sorting on the P line. There they are. Great photo of what went on. Anyone know who's in there?
The lady on the right is Wilda Cahoot.
Wilda. Okay,
used to live
Wilda.
down in
Yes,
the other village.
Wilda Cahoot. Yes.
Yeah.
You don't know the young lady on the left? No, and nobody knows who that is.
Wilda is the daughter of Elliot Bell, who I will be talking about later.
Okay. Move on. Okay, there's our flavor pack labels here. So real quick, I'm going to slide through some of the labels. Now, I specifically picked out of Mr. Wright's book. He has all the labels, all of them, collected, but I just picked a few out that were specifically Campbell and Burns of Bedeque. There's the potatoes, whole potatoes, sliced potatoes, and it's a different version of can. PI salad cut potatoes. I like this. I wish, do they still make these? This sounds really convenient. So, and they would actually put the recipe for the potato salad with it. Chunky cut PEI potatoes. And when they went into the dehydrated production, here's some that came out of Campbell and Burns. And again, directions with it. Another one of their products. And you'll see Central Bedeque, made right here. And then the beans, just really quick, the fancy cut carrots. And they went into beans, and when they went into the dried beans, they were able to go from operating the plant from 10 weeks a year to 10 months a year. So it provided more employment for everyone when they started into this. Greens. That made you enjoy your beets more. Yeah. Okay, and also he had all the flow charts from the systems in that box. So there's the turnip greens. And no wonder they started with turnip greens. Look how simple that is. Washer, inspection, cutter, blancher, whatever that is, filler, sealer, and out. So that's fairly simple. But now look at this. This is the peas. There's a lot more to it, isn't there? A lot of washing. Apparently peas are a very dirty vegetable. It's required. That's why they need all those ponds out there. Well, that's the process, and we're going to see some photos of that. Kidney beans and chickpeas. So this is the dried bean system. And now this is a presentation to the government when the land issues were going on. Oh dear, I forget the year. I think it was in the 1970s. Yeah. And they are, and in this brief to the government, you get a sense of how they looked at their stewardship toward the community, toward the farmers. So they had a little brief of their history there in 1954. Two island farmers, Harold Campbell and Lloyd Burns of Bedeque, combined their ingenuity and foresight and established a company to process vegetables for which no market for the fresh produce existed. A small government loan helped finance their project, and through carefully planned and steady growth, this company, Campbell and Burns, was able to retire its original loan by 1958. So that's very few years, and that loan was paid off. No government financing has been sought since that time. In 1973, 10 million cans of processed vegetables rolled from the lines. A production growth which can be attributed to prudent planning, insight into realistic agricultural practices, close coordination and compatibility with island government agencies, research programs, and, no, a sincere interest in the farming community, locally and provincially. And over on the next page, land purchase practices of Campbell and Burns are realistic and they're positive. We are not, this is, I think, really gives a sense of what they were trying to say here. We are not a threatening octopus with tentacles reaching out to grab and mutilate local established farms. That pretty much said it. Its policy has been and will continue to be that of purchasing individual land holdings and so on. So, again, that sense of stewardship that they had really comes out. This was a little sheet tucked in there, and I wonder if this is Helen's probably Helen Rayner's writing. And it just showed how it was a moving up business, even when it closed. So we want to talk later on about why the closures. If you look in the 1975-76 sales, you've got, was it 2,293,619? And then in the 1984, when it had closed, it was up to 5 million and something in sales. So it was moving up. It wasn't a dying business, it was a moving up business. All right, here we go. Now these photos are from the Campbell family, and they passed these on to us so we could share them tonight. Some really interesting photos of what it was really like in the plant. I love them. I love the t-shirts, I love the sweat. It really gives a sense of what was going on. And it was hot there. Everyone says hot work. Anyone who worked there. My husband asked me, he said, ask them how many people worked at Campbell and Burns. How many people here worked at Campbell and Burns at some time? Okay, all right. It's a few. I thought there might be a few more. Okay, well, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you. Maybe you can share some stories later.
That was 80 years ago.
At the beginning, no, 60. Anyway, here we go. So there we are, they're coming out of the retorts. I imagine it had to be cooled. Imagine smoking while you're working today. I don't think that would fly. Okay, picture of the canners, and just gives an idea of the system that was set up there. Yeah, and this guy got really hot, and you see a couple of these, no shirts. I think that's the quality control guy in white. That's my suspicion. Who else would wear white and a white hat? So, yeah. And the gentleman on the forklift, does anyone know who that is? I was curious who that is. It's a nice clear picture of him. Yes?
That's Mr. Stetson
Stetson?
from Freetown.
Okay, you don't know his first name.
I knew it this morning, but I forgot.
It's Mr. Stetson from Freetown on the forklift. How about the lady on the, again, a P line here? Does anyone know who that would be? Oh, you decided who the forklift operator was?
Alvin Stetson.
Alvin Stetson. All right. Now we're going outside. And I don't know the years on these, but some of you could probably make some good guesses. The crop duster was a method I certainly remember when I first moved here in 1979. They buzzed over our house all the time. All right. And more on the field. What tractors are those? I don't know my tractors.
Ford Major.
Okay. 1956. All right. Another one there. That's an Alice Chalmers?
Which one?
Is that the
Oliver.
Oliver? It has a name. Oliver. That's Oliver.
For a 1947 International truck.
What's the truck, Robert?
1947 International.
The truck is a 1947 International. Yeah. Give you an idea of the equipment. And now, moving on. Now we have equipment that matches, yeah. So this has got to be probably the 80s, I'm gonna guess. Not sure. Before that? Before that? Okay. 70s? Okay. Alrighty. And here is the P process. And wow. Now, are those tubes, are those the washers? I'm gonna guess. Those are washers? Thrashers.
Thrashing machines.
Thrashers.
The picture before it was, I think, after that.
Oh, okay. All right.
There were mobile combines and things.
Okay. All right. So this process of thrashing at the site was replaced with the mobile units at the field. Okay. So this is fairly early on then. And look at Bedeque. Look how clear the land is in that picture. So it gives you an idea how things have changed even since then in the landscape. So there's all the thrashers.
Now wait, can we back up one?
Sure.
if you notice that big pipe across there, that
Yes.
was a water line going over to a flume system.
Okay,
The thrashers dumped the raw peas into a conveyor, and they were flumed right inside to where the ladies are standing.
okay.
cleaning.
So I don't know if you could hear Ronnie said that that pipe is the water running the water into the flume, which would convey the peas down into the system. Okay, we'll go on here. Some more pictures of that thrashing equipment there. And I think Roy said that's your mom, Roy?
No, that's my father's mother.
Your father's mother on the right and your sister on the left. Okay. And picture here of the pint-sized pea industry starting up. Again, it gives some interesting information in it. Again, 1954, putting up 4,000 cases, etc. So I'm not going to read all that. We're going to just move on. Again, this is staff. It branched out, Campbell and Burns branched out into the machinery division, and George Campbell was in charge of that. So there's some names here. George Campbell, general manager; Norman Reeves, sales manager; Donald McFarland, salesperson, and I can't read some of these. Norman Reeves, service manager, and so on. I'm having a hard time reading them. I was given a better quality copy, but it was too late to get it into the slideshow, so maybe some of you can pick those names out.
The bottom three is S.C. Wright, Robert Linkletter, and Ruth Lord.
Ruth Lord, bookkeeper. All right. And, all right, so move on here. This looks to me like they are on a sales trip. Where is it?
Toronto, Ontario.
Toronto, Ontario. So, Robert, are you in that picture? It might be you on the end. Okay. So they are drumming up sales.
Yeah, that was the farm machinery show for Eastern Canada or whatever.
Farm machinery for Eastern Canada. And so, Robert, were you fabricating those machines at that time? Were you selling the machines? Or?
Yeah, I helped manufacture that stuff, loaded it on a truck. It was a Friday afternoon, and at that time, commercial trucks couldn't run in Quebec on Sunday. So we wanted to have that in Toronto.
Can I get you to tell the story? Because I think you need to tell it with the picture.
Okay. That picture there is taken at the exhibition grounds in Toronto, and that box was manufactured in Bedeque. We loaded it on the truck, and the interesting thing that happened, the paint on it was new steel, and when we went to put it on, we put it with a nylon rope so we wouldn't scratch the paint, and the whole end lifted right off, just poof, gone. And I was getting ready to go, so we painted her again right quick, and so how are we going to get to Toronto on Monday when we can't go through Quebec on Sunday? So I said to Harold, that's not hard to fix, we'll leave right now, 5 o'clock at night, and we'll go up, and get through Quebec on Saturday. He said, never left home at night. Well, you're going to do her this trip. so we left, and we got up to first Fredericton, and then the next day we got into Ontario somewhere, and then Sunday we finished the trip right into Toronto. And when we got just on the outskirts of Toronto, Harold pulled off the side of the road he was driving. He said, you take her from here. So I took her right down through Toronto to the exhibition grounds.
Is that a hopper that goes in the farmer's field on a truck?
That was right on a truck.
That's a
He
fertilizer.
said it went right on a truck,
It's a
Yeah.
fertilizer hopper.
Oh, fertilizer.
a fertilizer hopper.
Okay.
We just sold, I work for Linkletter Farms, and we just sold 2 of those a month ago, original, that are still going.
Did you hear what Kenny said? It said Linkletter Farms just sold 2 of
Quality
these
work.
original
Original,
That's
just 2
right.
months ago.
Yep.
There you go.
So, there you go, made to last.
What year was that?
What year would that have been made, Robert?
Equipment be made in, 65.
65?
Wow.
Roughly. Okay, so here we have Harold out in the field with Mr. Jodery and one of his production managers or assistants, Mr. McGrath. So this is when Avon Foods had stepped in. And
There's
just
the
kind
drum.
of bird's eye view. And there's your can of peas again with the twins advertising. I hope they didn't drive down the road like that.
We were at Freak Show.
Roy says they were a freak show. We have the boy and we have the can. And they're wondering if this is Ruth Lord here at the front. We're not sure. Lady. Oops, I went too fast. Okay. So that's the end of our slideshow. Now, what we'll do is we're going to ask our guests, our History Circle guests, to swing around and run over the water bottles and get you to face the crowd. They look pretty friendly. Don't think you need to worry. Okay. So the format's pretty loose. I'm just going to start some questions, and hopefully they're going to give us some good stories. That's really what we came for, some stories. Facts are important, but stories flesh out the facts, make it interesting. So, thank you, Dick. All right, thanks. Since everyone is settled down here, I will do my introductions. And I do know some of these gentlemen, but I just met Kenny tonight. So I need a little paper to help me through the introductions. So on our far right, we have Donald Burns, who's the son of Lloyd Burns. And Donald has carried on a successful poultry business that his father passed on to him. We're probably all familiar with Burns Poultry Farm. And he's in turn passed it on to his son. And carrying on, I think it's the 7th generation of poultry business, isn't it?
Our son and his wife are running the 7th generation.
7th generation.
The grandchildren are the 8th.
And the grandchildren will be the 8th. That's quite
If
something.
you decide.
Okay, so that's Donald. And then we have Robert Linkletter. And after leaving Campbell and Burns, Robert worked, of course, in the fabrication side of Campbell and Burns and in other areas too, which we'll let you talk about as we go into it. He was with them for a long time. He is, of course, started Linkletter Welding, a large welding and fabrication facility here in Bedeque that we're all familiar with if we're from Bedeque. Farmer's best friend. And then we have Ron Rayner, and Ron has retired from 30 years with Marine Atlantic, mostly in electrical side of things, and his mother Helen, as we noted before, worked with Campbell and Burns all the way through. So Ron's got some stories to share. And then we have Roy Campbell, one of those cute little twins that was on top of the car. Look at him now, he's still cute. And Roy didn't stay with the food processing business. He decided to go into music. And you've made a career, he's been all around the globe as a professional musician, so he's had quite an interesting life. And then we have Kenny Myers. And Kenny was a production supervisor with Campbell and Burns. He was with them for 12 years. He started as a forklift driver, so that showed you could move up with the company. And then he went on to Linkletter Farms after Campbell and Burns, and as shop foreman and field supervisor. So we're really pleased to have you all here. Thank you for participating. So let's start at the beginning. We don't have to do this chronologically. If you got a good story about something, jump in. All right, but I do want to start at the beginning, just to get a foundation of what went on. So, Lloyd, I'm going to ask you, what precipitated the formation of the partnership with your father, Lloyd, and Harold Campbell. Do you know why they joined together? What were they involved with before Campbell and Burns? That was mutual.
Might want to use the mic or
Yes, you can have the mic.
speak loud.
Yeah, you'll have to pass it around.
Yes, my name is Donald Burns. My father was Lloyd Burns, and I can go back 70 or so years. There wasn't much going on in the Bedeque Freetown area during the period I'm going to talk about. What happened was we had a war and everything kind of came to a halt. Everything that was being produced here was either a general farm or fishing or you were looking for work. Now, Lloyd Burns had a small farm and most people raised all kinds of different animals. He decided to focus on chickens. He was raising brown egg layers, and he had an arrangement with the federal government to come and blood test all his birds and ban them all, and he was trying to create a better type of bird, a better type of layer. So bear that in mind. If you head from the farm over here, there wasn't much happening. Come down the old road, didn't have the new bypass, the old road, you came to the major building was the church, Baptist church. Across the road from that was the graveyard.
Lloyd, maybe if it's closer, I'm not sure if it'll help or if it's just the mic. If you can hold it almost right close.
Right close?
Yeah, it is.
Oh. Okay,
Right straight in front, Donald.
right straight right like that.
Try that.
I'm not used to running one of these machines.
Could you back up to where you were saying what it was like when you came down the road?
Oh, when you came down the road, there wasn't a link ladder welding. There wasn't much of anything except the Baptist church. Across the road, you had the graveyard. The next property to that was Ivan Dawson. Now, Ivan Dawson played a part in the whole thing. Because we were into poultry, and so was Ivan Dawson, they formed the Bedeque Chick Hatchery, which was right across from Ivan Dawson's driveway, called the Bedeque Chick Hatchery. And they produced baby chicks and sold them, and that went on for a while as a partnership. After that, for some reason, my father had the urge to do something else. And one day I was in the truck with him, and we dropped into the hatchery, checked everything over, and then he wanted to go down and check on this building that was becoming empty. It was the Dunk River Dairy. Now Calvick's, we passed there, everything happened at Calvick's, you could buy and sell almost anything there. We went to the dairy and got in the truck. My father went to talk to people. I'm a young kid, I don't need to talk to anybody. I started roaming around the building. It was kind of dilapidated, really. The back end of the building, where farmers came with their barrels to get way to pick back the pigs, it smelled something awful. There was old sour milk and so on. I walked around, I didn't think a whole lot of it, but the building seemed sound. Anyhow, we got back in the truck and I thought very little more of it. Very short time after that, there seemed to be a great scurry within the family. We dissolved the partner. My father dissolved the partnership with Ivan Dawson. No longer had anything to do with the Bedeque Chick Hatchery, and there was a move afoot to do other things. So I'm not sure how he met Harold Campbell, but he hooked up with Harold Campbell somewhere in that period of time. And I think Harold Campbell was interested in poultry at some point, and what they did is they decided to build a new chick hatchery in Summerside. And this would be when the Campbell and Burns started to be formed. Buckeye pieces of equipment were brought in, 2 large incubators, a hatcher, Harold, my father. I'm going to focus on my father because that's what I know best. Anyhow, Howard Clark was rather clever in many ways and very meticulous in what he did. He was summoned to assemble this equipment because it had to be very exact. You had to maintain a proper humidity level, you had to maintain a proper temperature within a half a degree, or you had problems. And he was good at all that, and he ran the chick hatchery once it was set up. We had a source of hatching eggs, and we had a lot of customers. During that early 50s, almost all the farmers had 50 to 200 laying hens and some other crops and so on. But that was a source of sales for all the chicks. That's fine, you had all those sales. All those people had to sell or do something with their poultry. Their poultry, mostly layers and some meat birds, they decided to set up a killing plant. So Harold and Lloyd was familiar with the poultry industry. They went up the road. If you go to Calvick store and turn left and head up the road there, Bob Reed lived up there, and he had a building. Well, they chose the building, and the next time I was there, they were tearing it all apart. And they installed new, probably used equipment maybe, but equipment to process poultry. And during that time, they started processing poultry, and they hired a crew. And then they had a source of hatching eggs. They had a source of a hatchery that would hatch the chicks. The Bedeque chick hatchery closed, went out of business. So they had the business of selling chicks and buying back any of the poultry that somebody wanted to sell. During that time, these things got set up fairly quickly and seemed to run reasonably well. My father was reasonably good at choosing the right people for the right jobs. He had Howard Clark, and he had him run the hatchery. He had several people running the killing plant. He mentioned a bunch of names in the paper that I have there. And at that time, things seemed stable. They were running those two businesses. The focus switched over to the cannery, because the cannery, you had to grow a crop and harvest it and process it. So they were busy, and you saw all the modern equipment. Now, we're looking back 70-some years. You didn't have modern equipment. You're lucky if you had a tractor. Probably didn't have hydraulics and all kinds of things on it. So they bought the building, they renovated the building, and they installed all kinds of crude types of equipment to process these peas. I was over a few times running around having a look at everything as a young kid. One day I realized that we had peas planted in a 10-acre field just to the west of the farm. They grew and blossomed and ready to harvest. One day I looked out and we had an Alice Chalmers tractor, a miserable thing to drive. And they had mounted on the back of it a swather. And they had turned the steering wheel around, not to go forward, to go backward, and the pedals and so on. And this guy was driving the tractor down through the pea field, cutting the peas and putting them in windrows. Well, windrows were great. I thought, that's fine, what are we going to do now? I looked around and a truck showed up. Now these weren't modern trucks. These were like 2.5 ton, maybe 3 ton trucks. And they had sides and a front part, but nothing in the back. And that back part was just open. And on the floor of the truck, I saw where there was like a huge big pallet made out of like 6x6 or 2x6s. I have no idea what they're doing with that. A chain hung out the back. Okay, that's fine. And along came this truck, and he backed up and hooked onto a hay loader. Well, at that time, hay loaders kind of came and went in a short period of time. But the hay loader was hooked onto the truck, and they went down through the roads and picked up all the peas and deposited them on the truck. A young kid with nothing going on in the community very much, I thought this was pretty neat. So when the truck was loaded, I couldn't contain myself. I hopped in the truck and went over to Campbell and Burns' cannery, and he backed up to this big foot square post that was sticking out of the ground. I had no idea what was going to happen then. He hooked a chain that was hanging on the back of the truck onto that and drove forward. All the peas slid off the truck into a pile. That pile sat right beside two viners, they used to call them, or combine thrashers for thrashing peas. Very old and crude, not like the ones you saw on slides. These were very old ones. And we had two men with hay forks. They forked the peas in that pile into these viners, thrashed the peas, and they come out in trays, and then were taken into the plant. And they had a big round table. The table had many holes in it, where the cans were placed underneath, and these peas ended up on the table and were fed, so the cans were all full. You have to remember, labor was cheap back then. An awful lot of people needed work. 50 cents an hour was a big price to pay for help, so you could hire all kinds of people, and they filled those cans, and they went to the ceiling and onto the retort. And the first year, as I recall, they were saying that they had canned and cased 300 cases that year. That was their startup of peas. I'm not familiar with the turnip green part. I guess they did that as a sort of a test or whatever. I never was exposed to that. But those cans were the first run. And what else can I tell you?
That's a great foundation.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to whoever you want.
I'm going to, okay.
Do you have another question?
I'm going to ask,
So I'm trying to cover Lloyd, which you did a great job on, and Harold and Robert. I'm going to go to the character of the men, and you were telling me that Harold was very analytical, and he gave you some advice on choosing a wife. Can you tell us that story?
Anyway, I just started to go with Joan, and it was in February, and we were traveling to Toronto on one of our missions, and we were talking about, Harold would discuss anything, you know, how much this going to cost, how long did it take, and on. He said, Robert, he said, you got a new girlfriend, and he said, can she cook? I said, well, I don't know. I've been there once for dinner, and I'm not sure whether she did it or her mother. But anyway, he said, did you ever think of the economic value of a good wife over just the average fair wife? No, Harold, I never did, and I wouldn't know where to start. So then he started telling about how Beth made butter and canned vegetables and all this stuff. So that was how that started. And then we went on to, you know, various other things as we traveled on.
could you share about the rolled oats? I love the rolled
Oh yes, okay, yeah. So he said, for instance, he said if you took a rolled oats, he says you could buy regular rolled oats, let's say it was 50 cents a pound. You could buy quick rolled oats, which would be 75 cents a pound, and instant for $1. Now he said in the end it was the same rolled oats, but he said you had to get up 3 minutes earlier in order to cook the oats. So that was where the wife would come in and save you 75%, I guess. So anyway, I don't know what do you want to go on to next on that?
Well, let's talk about, we talked about where it was originally located. Don, you covered that really well. So let's go to what events happened to Lloyd that made him step out of the business and sell his controlling shares so that Avon Foods came in. Can you tell us how that happened?
Yes, after several years of what looked like quite a successful startup of 3 separate enterprises, once the fall set in, things sort of settled down. People had their poultry slaughtered, the hatchery hadn't started, the cannery had processed the vegetables. My father developed a lump on his neck. And he thought he should have it looked after, so he went to Charlottetown to have it removed because it bothered his neck and it bothered his collar. He couldn't wear his white shirt or anything because of this lump. Anyhow, he went down, everything seemed quite straightforward, just a small lump, gonna remove it. When he went down, he had it removed, and he reappeared on the farm, back to the family. He had a pretty sad story. The lump was cancerous. It had grown around his jugular vein. And if he didn't have it removed, very quickly, it would chew through his jugular vein and he'd bleed to death in no time. So he had very little choice but to have it removed. But to have it removed, they had to remove the jugular vein part as well. Now you have, as you probably already know, you have two jugular veins running up both sides of your neck. They could remove one of his jugular veins and cap that off. If they did that, a 240-pound muscular man that was in good shape become a man that the doctor said he shouldn't lift anything heavier than his watch strap. So he was, anyhow, he went to the doctor and he had his operation. He had a 50-50 chance of coming through the operation. He came through the operation. But before all that happened, he came home to the family and he said, the doctor said to go home, get your affairs all in order. I don't know if we've ever had to do that or not, but he had to come home and get his affairs in order. So he went to visit with his partner. They sorted it out. Lloyd Burns would maintain ownership of the killing plant. He would maintain ownership of the chick hatchery. Harold would take over the complete control of the cannery, except for the shares that Lloyd Burns had, and Lloyd Burns had to do something with his shares. So he had contacts with Avon Foods. He sold his controlling interest to Avon Foods, and he went for his operation. He came back, a relatively weak man, but he was able to operate the hatchery and the killing plant for the years following. And after that, Avon Foods and Harold Campbell grew the cannery and prospered and did very well. My father just sort of was able to maintain the killing plant and the hatchery, and both of those industries sort of, farming all changed. If you look around today, almost nobody has 50 chickens. Nobody has 200. Nobody has a couple of thousand. They all have 10 or 20,000. The odd person has a few in the farm, but the hatching business sort of slid away just because the times change. And because of that, what are we going to do with the poultry killing plant? When I came home to farm, I took over all that business, and I kept assessing it. There was no way it would grow. All it would ever do was be shrink. So I ended up selling all the equipment out of the killing plant, and we run the hatchery until the 80s, and I realized I was just wasting my time. So we closed it down and threw away the equipment because it wasn't worth anything. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you, Lloyd. So let's go to the workers. Cover some of the workers. And I want to talk about the work ethic that was in the community at that time. That was mentioned. There were a lot of people looking for work around here in the 50s. So let's go. I'm going to hand this over to Roy. And Roy, you shared a story about how you could hardly wait for summer. And can you tell them why you could hardly wait for summer?
Well, I'm not sure that's exactly true, but anyway. Let me see what year would this have been, but let me go back before my brothers and I started to work at my father's plant. I can remember in the early 60s to late 50s, my father had all kinds of chicken houses in the front field of our farm in Shelton. There were a couple of hundred, maybe 300, and Ross and I would have to feed them every morning and every night, and I never, ever wanted to see another chicken again. it was our involvement, my father's involvement, although he was the figurehead, I think I can say that it was very much a family affair. So on the home front, my mother took control. She had 4 kids to look after, black Aberdeen Angus cattle, potatoes in the field. My father was up at the plant. And my mother was involved on the sidelines. She became friends with a lot of the people that worked there, especially the full-time, well, not as much the seasonal people, and she had their ear if they had any problems, and she'd talk about that with my father over the dinner table. We were always told to sit there and say nothing, but we listened to what was going on at the dinner table. And so there was a very strong sense of community and family in everybody that worked at the cannery. And when Ross and I first started, we would get up in the morning, feed the cattle, get on our bikes, be at the cannery at 7, put in a 12-hour day, get on our bikes, go home, feed the cattle, go to bed, and repeat. We thought it was terrific, and we got 90 cents an hour. And we had never gotten an allowance before, so we thought we had basically died and gone to heaven. Some of the, well, quite a few of the folks at the cannery became good friends. I think of Valerie Curtis and his wife, who worked in the cookhouse, providing meals. There were a lot of support staff who did such a fabulous job because they felt that they had an invested interest in the community to make the company a success, because if it was successful, they felt a sense of real accomplishment. What else can I say? My grandfather, after whom I'm named, was very much involved. He thought he was involved. My father would go up to his house, which is kitty corner from Colvick's store, every day for lunch, and my grandfather would sit there and give him all kinds of advice: do this, do that, do it this way, that way. And my father would nod his head, but he paid very little attention to him. So my father, I think, had the ability to listen and be analytical and not get too emotionally involved, to see the straight and narrow. My mother was the one that picked up those pieces. I can remember one day my father came home and told my mother, well, there was an incident at the cannery today. 2 ladies on the P-belt got into a fight. And my mother said, well, no, not a fight, surely not. Oh yes, they were throwing pea cans at each other, filled with peas. It was really bad. These people shall remain nameless, but I mean, you know, there was the odd conflict going on. But, you know, there were a number of times, I can remember one especially, when my little brother, who is the big man sitting in the front row, was 2 months old. There was an event in the warehouse where all the workers got together. There was entertainment. My grandfather composed a bit of doggerel. There was a hot meal served, presents exchanged. So there was a sense of community and, you know, a feeling of accomplishment.
Well, that's great. That's what I wanted to hear. So was my next question, that sense of camaraderie in the staff. I know that Ron has something he wants to present having to do with that, but I want to get over to Kenny here just for a second. So Kenny, what do you have to say about your memories of working there, and of some memorable people, some of the staff, just a sense of what it was like to work for Campbell and Burns?
Well, if it was still operating today, I'd be probably still there. It was a great place to work. Never had any issues. Harold Campbell and my father were first cousins. And Harold offered Dad to win partnership at the same time when they were getting started up. And Dad had already bought a farm, and he said, no, we can't do that. I want a farm. And he said, well, we can use the land. I want you as a partner. So they were good friends. That's not why I got a job there. I get out of high school, I needed the job. Applied, got the job right off the get-go, driving a forklift. So it was only a very short time. I don't know if it was George Wright at the time, whether he seen something in me or whatever, but anyway, I ended up in production, running the plant. And I think it was you asked how many employees was there. What I can remember, I did around 115 time cards.
And what year?
1978, 9, 1980, 82. At that time. We run 2 shifts at the last of it. It was like a family, the crew. There was some families that I can remember, like Frank and Eva McDonald's family, the Cameron family in King Cora, the Fallen family. Pretty well the whole family worked there. And we're talking 6, 7, 8 people worked there. And we kind of become family type of thing to one another. If somebody was having an issue and needed help, needed you to chip in, needed help. And as far as the production, when it was go time, we started with the greens first, then the peas and carrots, then the straight carrots, then the beets, pickled beets, chow, mixed vegetables, potatoes. And they were trying to expand into all these vegetables so they could keep the plant going as long as possible to make it efficient. The longer it run in the year, the more efficient it would be, but we only had one problem. We canned so much product that we had to stop and strip the sealers down and overhaul, or we wouldn't make it through the next season. So at that time, there was a month or two there, and this before, well, let's say June, the first part of July, we tried to be going by the 10th or 12th of July, that we just had a certain period of time, that thing had to be overhauled and back into production, because it was all about the money. It was costing a pile of money to run this plant, and it had to go. I enjoyed it 100%. The management and stuff was 100% to work for. I can't say a bad thing about it. I will, this might venture off a little bit, I'll keep it short. My dad and Harold were best of friends. And Avon Foods in the valley was facing bankruptcy. They were in bad shape. And Harold was very successful with Campbell and Burns. And they wanted to be backed. They wanted some money. And Harold said he could help them out, but he had to have control because there's things going on that wasn't working. So that didn't work. They wouldn't go with that because they wanted control, but they want money. Harold says no. Harold was telling my dad this. Dad revealed this to me years ago. So after a while, they had no choice. Avon Foods in the valley she was going down. She was history. So they came to Harold and said, okay, we'll cut their deal. So Harold helped manage and get them back on their feet. And when Harold passed away, Avon Foods in the Valley was afloat. So that was the kind of manager that he was and its success, and that's why it was so successful. And we had a lot of staff there that 40 years, 30 years was nothing. Like, there was all kinds of people that worked their whole life there, going to retire there, and did retire there.
Thank you, Penny. That's well said. All right, Ron, more on the staff and the environment of working.
First of all, I want to thank Val and Doug for inviting me to be at this presentation tonight. I really enjoy it. I enjoy hearing the stories of Campbell and Burns. And as most people know, I don't like speaking in front of an audience, but I'm here. I'm here tonight. I'm going to touch on numerous things that I have marked down and I was asked to address. And yes, my mother was the first secretary with Campbell and Burns, and she was here for the very last day. The history of my mother is she worked at the killing plant for quite a few years, and actually that was my first working job, was at the killing plant too. I took over from Elliot Bell, who was the official chicken sticker, and that was my job. And his wife and my mother were official chicken pluckers. I do remember distinctly the day that Harold Campbell and Mrs. Campbell came to our house, and Harold had asked Mother, he did not say, I need you, or require, he said, I want you to be the secretary in our new business. Would you be interested? And she said, Harold, I have no education. And he said, I have already addressed that. And he said, I'm aware of that. And he enrolled her into a business degree. I don't know how she got there because I was just very small at that time. But she went and she passed her business administration course, and she started off from writing the first check until there was 100, 200, 300 a week that had to be looked after. The numbers that we've seen on the screen were Mother's numbers, and that brings up another story. I remember one weekend, Mother could not sleep. Something was bothering her bad, and the books at the end of the month hadn't balanced by the total of $6. And she was distraught as to where did the $6 go. And through the night, I remember her getting up, and she said, I found it. She got her pencil and paper out and started doing numbers. She found the $6. Apparently she had a photographic memory, and she went through the books in her sleep and found the $6 that she was looking for. But she really enjoyed working at Campbell and Burns, and well, basically all of my younger family, we all worked here too. But I must tell you this story. I started off at 12 years old of being the chicken sticker, and I took over from Elliot Bell, who transferred down here. Him and his wife came down to the pea factory, and that left the jobs vacant up there. Does anyone here remember Mr. and Mrs. Bell coming to work at Campbell and Burns? There's the hands up, a couple of hands. Mr. and Mrs. Bell drove from the other village on a 1940 CCM bicycle with a crossbar. Elliot did the pedaling, and she did the hollering which way to go. And she was on the crossbar holding a big, it looked like a mailbox lunch can. And They would drive, coming downhill was wonderful. When they hit the bridge, she would have to get off and walk back up the hill. Mind you, when they were at the killing plant, it was something to see them people going home after work. The hill nearly all the way, starting right at the killing plant. She got on the crossbar and they started down the hill, and by the time they were going by here, if anybody remembers Guy Lafleur making a breakaway to go in and score, his hair standing straight out behind him, that was Elliot going, and she was on the crossbar, and would they ever lace her through the village until they got to the bridge, and she'd have to bail back off and climb up the hill going the other way. But there was a lot of memories. You talk about the people, camaraderie and whatnot. I'm going to use a name here, and it is not derogatory by any means, but does anybody here remember Black Freddie, who used to work at Campbell and Burns? There's a few hands. His name was Freddie Arsenault, and at that time, with the picture that Val had showed of the old building, there was one hot water steam boiler, coal fired, and Freddie had to shovel coal all day long. No breeze. They did hook up a fan one year to blow in there because it was a nail of a building, and he shoveled coal all day long to keep that boiler up to temperature for cooking all them peas. And although there was two Fred Arsenaults in the village, he was the dark one. He was called Black Fred. But when he was shoveling coal, all you could see was the whites of his eyes and his teeth, because man, he was a hard worker. Now that brings up another, have I got a moment or two to tell another story? I want to tell this one quick. I was at a company a few years ago, and this actually started in World War I. And this company had a large delegation of workers who were laborers, picks and shovels, that type of thing. And a foreman came in and said to the man, the boss, he said, if we buy a steam shovel, I can eliminate 20 to 40 man jobs, 24 hours, just like that. Yes, he said, try it. So 2 days later, the foreman came back in, and he said, I've eliminated those jobs, we have the steam shovel, and everything is working good. The guy, his name was Hershey. He owned Hershey Chocolate. Hersheyland in Pennsylvania is named after him. He told the foreman, take the steam shovel and sell it. Hire all them men back. And they did, and Hersheyville in Pennsylvania was the only municipality in the United States that operated in the black the last 2 years in the war. Why? Zero unemployment. Everybody that wanted a job that would work had a job. Mr. Hershey was the same to Hershey as Harold Campbell was to Bedeque. If you look through the people who worked there, there was no princes, a lot of paupers. Everybody that worked hard, and as I said, if you wanted to work, you could get a job. But the amazing thing with Harold Campbell was that when you came there, he would look you over, and within a day he would designate where you were going to work. And everybody worked, or whatever they did, they excelled at it. They did really, really well. And it was all because of Harold's foresight. You could just take a look at anybody. Now, we had, as I say, with the Bells, those people were over 70 years of age, and they come to work every day on a bicycle. That's dedication. You just don't do that today. You can't get anybody to do the like of that today. And they were right down to myself. I'm 12 years old when I first started working here. There's a couple of notes that I wanted in here. Oh, a very important date that came to mind when I was researching this. On Saturday morning of this week, Harold Campbell would be 99 years old. On Saturday of this week. That's amazing. If that man had been fortunate enough to live that long, what would Central Bedeque have been like? He had a memory on him, it was just mind-boggling. what that fellow could do. He was a great guy with numbers, as Robert can attest to. I have so many things that I could tell you, but I know, I see Val starting to, no Val, just a second dear, I got one more thing I want to say. When, Carol, I know, I got the finger. When I worked at the later years at the factory, I was upstairs where the cans come down. She talked about carloads of cans. Most of you people don't know what a carload of cans is. Railway cars, 55 feet long, 8 feet, 9 feet high, 7 feet wide, full of tin cans.
They hold 44 pallets.
There you go, 44 pallets. And there was a box right beside where the conveyor took the cans down to be filled. There was a box about 3 feet cube. You had to pick up the pallets or the package of cans and put it in there, tear the front off. Then you had to use your fingers. If you were missing a finger, you were in trouble, because you could pick out 5 cans with one hand and set it. 5 cans and set it, and 5 or 10 if you used both hands, and we did. Harold came in one day, and we were a little bit behind. They had started a second processing line, and he said something to the fact that we'll have to pick up speed here a little bit. I said, well, you know, we're doing the best we can. We've got our 10 fingers, everything going. The next morning, Harold Campbell arrived up to where we were working upstairs. Would you hold that for me, please? Robert, would you hold that for me? Harold Campbell arrived with 3 of those. It held 5 cans, 4 cans, 3 cans, 2 cans, 1 can. You could pick up 15 cans and not spill a can. Set it down, put it back in. It was a godsend, and they used them right up until the very end of putting cans down through that machine. And he come up with that idea overnight, and he made it. And the original piece, if I recall, that was a hockey stick handle. Okay, Val.
I think Helen saw figures in her sleep, and Harold saw machinery and ways to solve things in his sleep. He was always going that way. We have a guest here in the audience, and Rhoda Mary, right? And she said she wanted to contribute something, so I want to give her opportunity before we wrap up. So can I hand you the mic? Would you like to get up? Okay. You can, yeah. So how many years did you work at Campbell and Burns?
I think it was only the 1 year.
The 1 year?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna, is it okay if I hand you the mic?
Yes. I have it all written here, so it won't take too long.
And we'll be wrapping up shortly after. And I was hoping if anyone had a story to tell, but we're running late, so I might, like the TV show, get an audience response whether you want to continue or not.
Okay, this is my part of what I have to say about the Central Bedeque Cannery. My friend and I were formerly from New Brunswick, near Bayfield and Murray Corner. It was summertime, and when we had the radio on, we heard they were looking for help in a cannery in Central Bedeque, Prince Edward Island. We discussed it together, and we thought we should come over to PEI and maybe get a job there. We didn't have a car, so I said to her, we won't hitchhike. On the ferry, we'll ask a senior couple if we could get a ride as far as Central Bedeque. And this couple said sure. They let us off at the Central Bedeque corner, and we walked down the street to the cannery. Everything was new to us, surroundings and all. When we got to the cannery and asked if they would give us a job, we heard advertised on the radio. They said yes and took us upstairs. They needed someone to put together the cardboard boxes for the cans. They had two equipment for, I'm shaking here, I'm trying to hurry. Okay, they had two equipment for making the boxes. These were posts up to put the boxes over, press on a pedal for stapling them together. They showed us how to form the box, put it over the post, push the pedal to do one side, then turn it opposite to do the other side. Then, as the boxes were made, we had to send them down on a chute to the first floor. They showed us how to make them, left us alone to see if we could do them, and we were left for about a half an hour. Then we were hired. Then we had to find a place to stay close to work in walking distance. Someone told us, Mrs. Hector Laird, they let us rent there. So we saw her, and she gave us a room and was a very nice person. We worked at the cannery that summer until we had to go back to New Brunswick to school. So this is my story about the Central Bedeque cannery.
I'm going to guess that did you meet your husband here? Did you meet your husband here?
Well, kind of in New Brunswick. Overfishing. My brother-in-law, you knew my brother-in-laws and that, so. Anyway, when we had some extra time, we'd keep on making boxes, making a room almost out of the boxes.
Thank you. I think Ron has a poem he wants to read, and then we'll wrap up. Unless somebody thinks we're really missing a story that they're just dying to tell us, we'll let Ron do his poem, and then if anyone has anything like that, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, Ron.
This isn't a poem, it is a biography of the staff of Campbell and Burns, and it was written by Roy Campbell, who would be Roy Campbell's grandfather, Harold Campbell's father. When you people come in carrying the flavor pack can, I just did a double take. I remember the day that can arrived in Bedeque, and shortly after Harold Campbell wanted my brother to put that can on and go in the fancy dress carnival down at the rink. It just gave me the willies when I seen that can, I remember that. This was written by Roy Campbell, and basically it touches bases with the machinery division and the cannery. Stanley gets around in the morning, he's always on time. He gets the work started and keeps it in line. Then he warms up the coffee, also the chair, for Helen when she comes. But if she's not there, he hops over the road with the speed of a youth to make ready the office for a girl named Ruth. These two girls are rival and always look their best. Which one will win out is anyone's guess. Stanley leaves for Toronto at the end of the week, but not a word from the gals, not even a squeak. No doubt they'll be lonesome and oft times blue, but they're honorable girls and will always be true. George is the manager of the industry so new. Marina, his wife, often gets No, it's yeah, might be dead. Batteries may be dead. George is the manager of the industry so new. Marina, his wife, often gets too. She says she is lonely when George is not home. Wonders why this work has got to be done. This is not going to work. I can stand up and holler.
Yeah, go ahead.
Norman is the salesman and takes to the road when he has a prospect to sell a new Ford. He is a good salesman, deny if you can. He knows everybody, both woman and man. He tried a fling at politics a few years ago, but was on the wrong side, so he lost to the foe. Mr. Shaw was so sorry, as you may know. Norman's wife was glad, for she did not want him to go. His wife is young looking as any gal can be, and owes her youth to being as busy as a bee. A large family she raised, some 8 or 9. My guess may be wrong, but I think I'm in line. Brother Lauren is the garage boss, as quick as a flash. They have an oil furnace, so don't bother with ash. He works on tractors, and sometimes they go. I like this line. He works on tractors, and sometimes they go, if Herb is around to give them a tow. Essie works steadily, employed here and there, from fixing a car to an old rocking chair. He puts his all into it and doesn't step to rest. His wife says she loves him and knows he's the best. Robert does welding from morning till night, and he goes for the girlfriend in a fast-moving flight. She is working away and doesn't always get home, but when she does, she surely takes charge of the room. One night on the Chesterfield, as they did sit, all warm and comfy, Robert thought, this is it. When he heard someone moving and looked up the stairs, he saw a bald-headed man in white underwear. The man shouted, "Joan, it is 2 in the morning. I wish that young fella was never born." Robert jumped to his feet and made for the door without saying goodbye or anything more. In such a hurry was he that he forgot cap and coat, and from that day to this day, he's still suffering from gout. His teeth have been aching, his throat has been sore, and Grandma won't let him out of the door. She went round quietly without noise or squeak, so the young fellow might get a good night's sleep. Once, when everything was quiet, she got a terrible scare when Robert shouted and kicked, "There's a bald-headed man in a white underwear." These garage men are professionals, at least so we thought, but a few days ago they surely got caught. And this is true. They filled a steel barrel with air, with room for no more. It exploded and the bottom came out and stayed on the floor. The rest of the barrel started upward soon, breaking joists and rafters on its way to the moon. The men stood around, looking as pale as ghosts. Not a word was spoken to say the most. They talked it over, and all did decide, when hot air is around, they would do it outside. Fenton is the spray man. He sprays for the weeds and mixes the spray so there will be no seeds. Agnew and Harold, the plowing they do, 1,000 acres or so, and then they are through. Albert does the disking when there is need. The new discs do a good job with all kinds of speed. If the day is not fine, in the warehouse they come, labeling and piling until time to go home. Donnie works fast, he never is still, until his lunch is brought up by his wife he calls Mill. He already has a family of 4, but says his house is large and could hold many more. John Goody is the man with the Volkswagen car. His girlfriend's in Bedeque, which is not very far. Major is versatile and does all kinds of work and does a good job and was never known to shirk. Lauren plows and labels and works on the truck. He takes heavy loads and never gets stuck. He sings and he hums with great glee and joy. He says he is sorry it wasn't a boy. I presume he had a daughter on that one. There's Barry. Alder lost his teeth, as they say in a fight, over a girl from the bag factory one Saturday night. His jaw is all healed, but his teeth won't grow, so he has to chew with only 3 in a row. Bella is always in good humor and light as a kite. She works in the daytime and sometimes at night. Sir Henry, her husband, looks after the eggs. When the hens start to cackle, he knows they have laid. Alice is a wonder. She scrubs and she sweeps. Agnew often helps her, but more often sleeps. He says when he's home he gets little rest. His wife and his babies are an awful pest. Malvina and Eva are faithful and true. They are always happy and never get blue. Edna is boss of the labeling room, and she is quiet and gentle as she is at home. She inspects the cans as they roll on the labeling machine where they belong. If the label is sealed or loose, if the label is soiled or loose on the can, it is not allowed in the carton which is packed by a man. Lloyd Affleck is a Canadian, but we regret to say he's taken a long vacation in the USA. Lloyd inspects the machinery when thrashing the peas and works on his back when he gets a kink in his knees. This is the end of my story I picked up by the way, and hope you don't think I've had too much to say. I've written these verses without favor or fear, and now wish you all Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That was written by Roy Campbell, and I presume that it was Christmas of '58. I'm not sure. Roy, do you know when that would be? They had a Christmas party.
58.
Thank you.
I think we need to wrap it up it's 8:30, but if anyone had a brief story they really came here to share, we would like to give you opportunity.
I'll just say one thing. When your father died, my grandmother found out, it stuck in my head because she cried. She seemed to love your father an awful lot. My grandmother.
Barry Glantz, it was your mom, right?
My grandmother.
Your grandmother, Alice, was the cook
Yeah.
for many years at Campbell and Burns, and she was apparently a fabulous cook. But they fed the staff as well there. So again, a part of that family thing. And he was saying how much she loved Harold, and how when he was tragically killed, she was really took it hard.
Yeah, I remember that. You know very well.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right, Doug, I'm going to give this to you to wrap up the evening.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. I want to thank the 5 people at the front and others who have contributed from the floor, and all of you for coming this evening. It's been a terrific evening of reminiscence. I knew nothing about Campbell and Burns except that it once existed in the village, but I've learned an awful lot today, this evening. So, Valerie, we appreciate you thinking of this idea, and I think we should do more of it for other recent history of the area. But can we give an applause to the panel?